Maybe it's a classic or maybe a flop. Has Katie seen it? She probably has not. She'll sit down and watch it if it's good or it's bad.
Hey, have you seen this?
No, Katie hasn't seen that.
Hi, I'm Katie, and if I had a nickel for every time someone said to me, "Wait, you haven't seen this movie? Oh my God, you need to see this movie," I'd be very rich. So this is my podcast where I finally watch those movies you all have told me I need to see, and I tell you what I think. Welcome back to another episode of Katie Hasn't Seen That. Welcome to episode 5 of season 3. I'm watching Clueless from the movie 1995. I wasn't allowed to watch this film, and now I'm watching it. A lot of you have been shocked that I haven't seen the movie Clueless. I know there's some fashionable things from this movie. I know there's an as if, but I do not know what this film is about. And before we dive in, just a couple things. I have YouTube videos. You can watch the podcast over on YouTube on my YouTube channel, KatiePetersPlays, and check out all of the episodes of season 3 in video format. And when you're over there, just like and subscribe and ring the bell. I also have a Ko-fi, so if you like Katie Hasn't Seen That and you want to support the podcast, head on over to Ko-fi. It's ko-fi.com/KatiePetersPlays. You can join the Popcorn Posse. You get early access to the video episodes of Katie Hasn't Seen That. You get behind the scenes notes, as well as a little journal where I write things down about the movies I'm watching and share those with you. So there's a bunch of fun stuff behind the scenes over on Ko-fi under the Popcorn Posse tier. So go check that out. And before we fully dive in, remember, sometimes you feel like a spoiler and sometimes you don't. We got lots of them, so buckle up. Let's begin. Clueless from 1995. I am doing my best to avoid any and all spoilers about this as I go. It's a pretty huge film and I have not seen it. When I was a kid, it would show up on like Comedy Central or like TNT and I'd catch like clips and bits of it. I just remember the outfit that Alicia Silverstone wears. I believe it's yellow and there's like bucket hats. So I think the fashion in this film might make my 1990s kid soul really happy. I didn't realize Paul Rudd is in this. Brittany Murphy, Breckin Meyer. There's a bunch of people in this that I recognize. So I'm ready to be entertained, to be quite honest. There's a lot of comedians and wonderful talent in this film that I didn't realize was in it, like Donald Faison, Stacey Dash, Eliza Donovan. There's recognizable faces, and I get to see them in all their glory in 1995. I believe this is a film that takes place in the high school era. I'm wondering if it's like a coming of age story. It is PG-13. It is an hour and 37 minutes. You know me. I love me movies around the hour and a half mark. And it is a comedy romance. Is this like a rom-com? It didn't feel like a rom-com whenever I heard about it. Clueless feels like perhaps it's about a character who is finding their way in the world in the 1990s in high school. I don't know. That feels like like any kind of movie genre from high school. That's exactly what it is. But I don't know if this is going to be like stupid. I don't know if it's going to be like funny. I don't know if it's going to speak to part of my soul. Am I going to cry? Am I going to be enraged by something? Perhaps. It is directed by Amy Heckerling, which I just looked up. She wrote an episode for the Muppets TV show that I absolutely love from 2016. But also she wrote Look Who's Talking, Look Who's Talking Too. Do you all remember that? Did a bunch of directing as well, including 2 episodes of Gossip Girl. Also directed National Lampoon's European Vacation, which I haven't seen. Wait, she also directed Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I haven't seen that either. Is that another one to add to the list? My God, how am I going to ever watch all these films? So clearly, Amy Heckerling has done a lot over the years and has made stuff that I have seen. I have seen some of the Look Who's Talking films. I believe that's like the babies who talk to each other. I grew up in that time frame where I was young enough to relate to the babies in it. I don't know if those movies hold up, but I have seen those. And I'm looking forward to seeing Clueless. I think this was a film that I wanted to see when I was younger, but I was at the age where I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of stuff, especially like high school things. And so now I feel like I'm going back and I'm trying to watch stuff that I never really got a chance to. I recently started watching The Gilmore Girls. I didn't know if I was going to like it. I know a lot of people in my life really enjoy that show. So as I'm diving in, it just feels like weirdly comforting. It doesn't have the feel that stuff does nowadays. It's got like wall phones. There's no cell phones. Rory used a beeper in an episode recently, and I was like, these were such simpler times. Also, I love the little community. I grew up in New England. This episode's not about Gilmore Girls. All I'm saying is I think the 1990s have a special place in my heart. I was a little 90s kid. I don't know if there's just something about that time period that is like squeezing my soul and giving it a hug. And I'm perhaps building up Clueless too much. Maybe it's not that kind of film to give your soul a hug. I don't know what it's about. My guess is there's a character who wears yellow clothes, who maybe is a little bit of an outsider, trying to make friends. And since there's the romance tag, maybe fall in love with the hottest guy in school. Maybe if I set like that kind of bar for this film, it still has the potential to hug my soul. I don't know. Clueless is probably about being clueless in love and clueless in life as you get your feet planted on the ground, working your way through high school. I don't know. I'm just guessing here. Let me look at how much the budget was for this film. The budget is listed at $12 million. That seems like a very small amount. I know this wasn't like an indie film, but the budget for this film was estimated to be around $12 million, and the box office says it earned $56.6 million. I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but that grossed a lot more than what it costs to make this film. So I don't know. This film is very much a part of pop culture. People dress up as this lead character. I know Alicia Silverstone was like kind of rocketed to fame because of this movie, or at least was already famous, and this movie was big because of her. I don't remember. All I know is I can picture this film. I can picture the characters and like stills from it, but I do not have the whole moving picture of it. So I'm going to fix that. Let's check the ratings. This film has a 6.9 out of 10 on Internet Movie Database, and 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. Metacritic gave it 68. I think that's one of the highest Metacritic scores I've seen in a while. And I gotta say, I know we love our Google users, but I'm like, is this rigged? Because it's 86% again. Should I stop using Google user percentages? Because I'm like, is it just defaulting at 86%? Google users, start voting on the movies. Tell me if you like them or not. Are you okay? Blink twice if 86% is the default. I'm just not really sure where the Google users lay nowadays, but I don't know. Maybe we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. All right, I'm going to dive into Clueless. I'm clueless with what it's about, but I'm excited to finally get this piece of pop culture in my brain, and I'm looking forward to talking about it with all of you. I'm back and I watched Clueless, so let's just dive right in like the movie. The movie just started. Like when Clueless started, the movie was like, we started. So first off, I'm going to tell you all what this movie is about thanks to our good friends at Rotten Tomatoes. Clueless is about a shallow, rich, and socially successful Cher, played by Alicia Silverstone. She's at the top of her Beverly Hills high school pecking scale. Seeing herself as a matchmaker, Cher first coaxes two teachers into dating each other. Emboldened by her success, she decides to give hopelessly klutzy new student Ty a makeover. When Ty becomes more popular than she is, Cher realizes that her disapproving ex-stepbrother, played by Paul Rudd, was right about how misguided she was, and falls for him. I have so many thoughts. Okay, we start this movie, like I said, we dive right in. No cinematic opening sequence. It's just, we meet Cher, we're rocking it. She's wearing that iconic plaid outfit, the yellow one, if you know what I'm talking about. I feel like that one's pretty popular. If you Google Clueless, one of the first things that comes up is that plaid outfit that Cher wears. So we're in it. We're starting this movie. We're diving right in. There's like a voiceover, Cher strutting her stuff at high school, all this stuff, getting ready for school. There is a moment where she's picking out an outfit and it's like a 1990s PC, but she's using it as a touchscreen. And I'm sorry, that wasn't really like technology back then from what I can remember. But I really appreciated that she literally had a program on her computer that she just like boop, boop, boop to pick out the perfect outfit, which was that plaid matching outfit. I was like, wasn't that already done? Like the outfit already matched. Like I'm pretty sure they did all that work for you, but it was just interesting to see. It kind of sets up like, look at how rich Cher is. She has this technology that's probably not even real. So the iconic outfit. And they dive into this movie with just some over-the-top comedy right out the gate. Just like in your face, like the girls with the nose jobs in high school. Just like kind of slapsticky. And I at first I was like kind of whiplashed as I started this film. But we get into it. The soundtrack, no doubt, is playing. I feel like this was from that time period where movies had soundtracks that went along with the films. I know I've talked about this before in prior episodes, but the iconic like little bits of like, hey, the movie's got a stellar soundtrack. So you not only want to see the movie, you want to own the movie on VHS or DVD, but you also want to go quickly to the store where you buy your CDs or your cassettes and you buy the soundtrack so you can relive the joy of seeing this film with each song that plays. So No Doubt is playing. I believe it was I'm Just a Girl. And I'm immediately like, oh yeah, let's go. This is a 90s movie. We meet some of Cher's friends. Stacey Dash played Dion. Is that how you say her name? Sometimes I feel like I watch movies and then the information just falls completely out of my head. I've noticed from doing Katie Hasn't Seen that names specifically don't stick with me. I remember the actors. I remember like certain character names, but there's some that just kind of like fall out of my head. And that is one of them. But we meet some of Cher's friends. Dion is dating Murray, I think was the name. And Murray's played by Donald Faison, who is from Scrubs. He's got braces on. He's kind of being an ass. It was just so interesting to see all these people baby-faced and fresh and people I recognize. I looked it up. Alicia Silverstone was 18 when they filmed this. The reason I always look up people's ages with when movies were made, because I think it's really interesting to see like what time period was this made in their lives. What time capsule moment is this locked into? However, the age becomes a much bigger issue for me later on in the movie, and I'll talk about that in a tiny bit. The movie's showing off all things 90s, pagers. Remember beepers? I don't. I remember them being in existence, but I never had to use a pager or a beeper. I found out recently that beepers are still being used in the medical profession, and I feel like I should have known that, but doctors use pagers still, because they're more reliant than cell phones and they can receive more information. And like, you know, hospitals have like underground walkways and stuff. Like if you didn't know, the morgue's down there sometimes, but sometimes when you go into the basement of hospitals, they have these areas that have a lot of interference. So you can't get a cell signal down there. But apparently, I mean, look this up on your own. I didn't do a ton of research on it. This is something that doctors still use today. And I was like, oh, pagers and beepers don't exist anymore. But apparently they do. And I kind of just want one, but I don't need one. I don't need it. It's just more for the novelty of it. Though it's good to know that technology is still in full force being used to this day. The movie starts with them being in high school in a class with the guy from The Princess Bride. Wallace Shawn, I believe is his name, but he plays Mr. Hall, and it's like debate history class, I think. This is where we start to see Cher in her full potential in class. She's very like proper. You could tell that she's like a popular girl. She's the daughter of a very rich, famous lawyer, and we learn a lot of backstory in the beginning. Like Cher's just kind of like lore dropping her life. Her mom passed away. We also kind of learn a little bit more in the beginning about her stepbrother, her ex-stepbrother, who's gonna be around more for some reason. I can't remember exactly why, but her dad married another woman who had this stepson. The dad divorced the mom, and so the dad's very much like, when I have a kid in my life, I have a kid in my life forever, which is very respectable. I appreciate that. But this character's name is Josh, but they're not blood related. And I think that's really important to keep in the back of your mind as we move through this movie. But we learn a lot about Cher's life. Cher's mom is no longer around. I think I said that, but just in case I didn't, here it is again. We just kind of see how Cher navigates life, navigates high school, using arguments to kind of one up somebody or go actually and get herself out of a lot of predicaments and trouble. We see a lot of that when she's in the classroom. Also, we get some iconic moments like as if, which is, I think, forever associated with this movie. As if, I don't think gets used very much anymore. But when I think of this movie specifically, I think of the as if line. Growing up, I remember hearing about this movie and that Cher was considered ditzy. And as I was watching this film, I was like, is she though? She seems really like well put together and aware. And I suppose I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I know like they're trying to portray her as like this ditzy airhead. However, I don't know if that was fully successful for me. I don't think Cher's a ditzy airhead. More on that later. The technology in this movie is so outdated, but I love it. Can't get enough of it. There's an old cell phone. The classroom also is full of out of control technology. The teachers at this school have no control over the students. There is just a mayhem everywhere. And I wonder if that's what it was like to go to high school in the 90s. I'm not really sure, but I think this movie's meant to be over the top. But I was literally watching this and going, oh my gosh, there is no control in this school for at least that classroom. This is also where we meet another character, Amber, who, this is not her fault. She had really bad bangs. The bangs were reminiscent of Courtney Cox and Scream. And I was like, who in the 90s was like, yes, they're not, what are they? Are they even considered bangs? It's like when they cut so close to the hairline and there's just like, it's not even a smattering. It's just like electricity shocked the hair follicles and they're just there at the top of your head, kind of brushed over. There's no way to really describe it. But if you Google Amber, Clueless, or Courtney Cox Scream, I think you'll get an idea of that bang situation from the 90s. And I'm just going to say, I'm really glad that didn't happen to me. I wasn't personally victimized by these 90s bangs, but what a look. And honestly, mad respect to anybody who rocked it. They're saying things like, OMG, whatever. The lingo in this movie is so 90s. It feels like almost a caricature of what the 90s slang was and how that doesn't happen nowadays. Because when I was a kid, I was walking around saying things like, whatever. I mean, I didn't sound like Cartman. It seems like I may have, but I was walking around as a kid like, OMG, whatever. You would do the W with your hands. You would do like the W symbol with your fingers. And I feel like that's not said anymore. It's not a snarky little remark anymore. I don't, where did it go? What happened to whatever? Where did it disappear to? And now we have words like Riz and lit. I think lit's out. Wow. Our slang and lingo changes so fast. Some things stay forever, like the saying all that in a bag of chips from the 90s didn't make it, didn't have any longevity. Some of it has to still be with us. Why does certain vernacular get stuck and is kind of timeless, but certain things are just like, dang, that is so dated. As I kind of said with Weekend at Bernie's when I did that episode, this movie feels like a time capsule of the 90s, like they tried to bottle that feeling and put it in a box that we can watch. And I really enjoy that. It's really fun to see what the essence of a time period was. So I feel like this season of Katie hasn't seen that. I got that with the 80s. I'm getting it with the 90s. I don't know what other time frames I might grasp that with, but it just feels like this movie was meant to capture the essence of the 90s and kind of encapsulate it forever. And I enjoy that. Obviously, you all know I really like the 90s, so I was just kind of eating it up. I was eating it up. I was enjoying it. The movie goes right in, like legitimately. They just get started running and they don't slow down. Paul Rudd's character, Josh, is introduced, comes waltzing in. They're hanging out in the kitchen, sharing Josh. And I was sitting there like on the couch like, I put in my notes, is Paul Rudd being a creep? By that I mean Josh. But the vibe I was getting that these two were putting off, I'm like, aren't you step siblings? And it made me feel a little weird. I was like, I think I'm picking up. They did a good job putting the vibes out there. But I was like, is this an accident? Maybe maybe the actors just had a vibe. No, it was the characters we find out later. And it was a lot for me. But I picked up on oh my God, I picked up on that vibe right from the get-go. And I was like, I'm just making it up in my head. And I settle on into the couch to watch more. And boy, was I not ready for what came next. They have little moments where they're watching TV in this movie. They watch Beavis and Butthead, which, oh my God, I forgot about Beavis and Butthead. I didn't watch it. I wasn't allowed to. No one is shocked. I don't know that I would have enjoyed Beavis and Butthead. There's a lot of that seems to go on for a very long time. And I'm not really sure that would be my cup of tea. However, I never got the chance to experience. Maybe I'd be a huge Beavis and Butthead fan. You never know. So maybe I should get that on the list to watch. Move it right to the top. There's also a moment later where they were watching Ren and Stimpy, and I was like, let's go. Weird I was allowed to watch Ren and Stimpy with all of that. There's a lot to Ren and Stimpy. And yeah, that one made the cut. Enjoyed those little nods to things that were very iconic in the 90s as well. Cher is not doing great in some classes at school, so she is working really hard to change her grades. And being the daughter of a lawyer, she's got a plan and she can change anything. She goes to the mall because I guess like she thinks clearer at the mall. I'm not much of a shopper. I find that I'm stressed out. Stores are closing all the time. I go like maybe once every 2 years and I'm like, where's the tea store? And the tea store shut down. The Starbucks that used to be in there is not there anymore. So the semblance of feeling like a safety net isn't there for me. I just don't like shopping. I always feel like all the women in my family love shopping. And I just think I missed that gene. That gene didn't make its way to me. I used to hate going to the mall, trying something on that you think is really cute and it doesn't fit you. And then when you go from store to store to store, all the sizes are different. And so now I just like to shop at my comfort stores where I know it's safe and I know the sizes will fit me. And I think that's built in. That's something we'll talk about too. This movie has so much like fat phobia. That is a whole big issue to talk about, specifically from the 90s and the early 2000s. I'm sure it was around in the 80s and 70s as well. But as a woman, I've experienced a lot of that guilt and shame with my body and feeling like it's not small enough. It's not like that package of that supermodel I see. And that's what society tells you need to be. This movie had several moments in it where that came up. Like, I had a yogurt and ate 2 almonds today. And that was something from the 90s that was huge. Like, that diet culture was huge. I remember as a kid feeling that pressure. And then in the early 2000s, feeling that pressure. I think we have a little bit more acceptance nowadays. I think we have a long way to go. And this applies to anyone who has experienced that kind of pressure to look a certain way. I know that it affects all of us in many different ways. I just am speaking from my own experience and how much pressure to this day, like I struggle with it. And how much I'm like, oh God, if only I could lose 5 pounds. And this movie highlighted some of those problematic things from this time period where it's just unhealthy. And it's something to, I think, look into. Because I just feel like it was so bad for all of us. It was so bad for our brains, especially developing brains. It's just not, damn, I've been going through it lately with capitalism and consumerism and all this stuff. Like, I know it's hard to escape it, especially if you lived in America like I do. But just feeling so crushed by it. Because, like, you try to do everything right, or you try as hard as you can to do everything as best you can, research things, do all that stuff, and you're still just being fed a bunch of shit. And even with all that research, sometimes you don't make the right choice and then you beat yourself up over it. This is a whole tangent. Maybe you can relate. I feel like with diet culture too, it was all like the Atkins, the Jenny Craig, the Weight Watchers, like all that stuff being pushed at you. Slim Fast, Yoplait yogurt, I think had like light yogurts that were pushed. It's just interesting to see that because I think I've taken a lot of time to grow in myself and recognize those things and have an awareness about them. And I noticed it a bunch in this movie. That is a side tangent all on its own. That's a whole other podcast probably. But I think this movie highlights even just minutely how prevalent diet culture was and how harmful it can be. And that was something that is from this time period and probably should be encapsulated in this movie as a moment to go, all right, how can we grow from that? How can we do a little bit better? This all started with me saying, I'm not much of a shopper. They went to the mall to use and think up some ideas. And I'm like, let's talk about diet culture. If you need to hear this today, you're beautiful just the way you are. You're beautiful 100% of the time. And don't let anyone else tell you different. I truly, truly believe that. Cher comes up with the idea, like just a jump cut, just like a hard cut from diet culture. All right, Cher's setting up the teachers. This movie is frantic, just like my podcast is. Also, I know I talked about it. We were talking about slang a tiny bit ago. They dropped the R word, which, dang it, man. Back in that time period, it was so used. And it was in so much media. I've been going through I don't know if it's a phase. Am I going through a phase where I'm watching a ton of content from the 90s and early 2000s? Like I watched Buffy. A lot of you know that. Xander dropped the R word in that. Just like there's a certain time period in our society where saying that word was just said. And it was put in television and movies. And it's so jarring and it's so upsetting to me. And it was around so much. So I noticed that when a character would just mention it casually. And that is something I am never prepared to hear again. And I'm so glad that society was like, nah, we're putting a stop to this. Because it's unnecessary. Cher decides she's going to try to set up two of the teachers, Mrs. Geist and Mr. Hall, with the hope that Mr. Hall will change her grade because he's just sad and he just needs a little bit of love in his life. So they literally go through these hoops to try to make Miss Geist think, oh, that Mr. Hall's thinking of her, and then gives Miss Geist things. Just all of this stuff to hopefully get her grade up because Mr. Hall, the only reason they're getting bad grades is because he's in a bad mood. Spoiler alert, it ends up working out. Their plan goes through and Cher gets this newfound confidence. They're getting ready to do some gym class, PE, doing some tennis. And this is where we meet Brittany Murphy. And I didn't realize she was in it. I think in the back of my head, I knew that she was in it, but she's in this movie. She's so young. I know that she has passed away, and that's super weird because when I was a kid, she was like rocketing to stardom. So I very much have her in my brain as just one of those like starlets. Do people say starlets anymore? Is that a thing? She's one of those people that will always forever be in my brain as a celebrity from the late 90s, early 2000s that I was seeing a lot as a youngster. This is another area where a lot of the fat phobia is happening in. I guess I made two notes. I was like fat phobia culture, going to the gym, and then fat phobia in it. So apparently I was really wanting to talk about that, and I did. But this movie does have a lot of that layered in it. Cher decides, I want to adopt Ty, who's played by Brittany Murphy, because Ty is brand new to this school, figuring out the ropes, and Cher goes, this is someone that I can help, because Cher's stepbrother Josh goes, you're just vapid and you don't think about anybody but yourself. So you don't use any of your power for good. And Cher goes, okay, bet I'm going to adopt Ty. And, I made these teachers fall in love. So look at what I'm doing in the world. Cher's trying to set tie up with Elton. And this whole time I was like, isn't Cher dating Elton? Because Elton's all over her in the beginning of this movie, kissing her on the cheek. So I was like, for sure, they're dating. I wrote, am I not keeping up? He's so handsy in class. Apparently they're not. Find out more about that later. They go to a party. Ty tags along. I believe Dion and Maury are driving, and Dion's trying to read a map, and Murray's yelling. It's so weird seeing someone use an actual map. Like, it blew my mind a bit, to be quite honest. That was a wild thing to see, because at least when I was learning to drive and getting around, I had MapQuest, which is kind of like printable Google Maps. So that was interesting and very much not relevant today in the same ways that it was in 1995. This movie was a lot more slapstick than I expected it to be. At the party, Breckin Meyer's in this as well, who I really enjoy, who plays Travis. I think his name is Travis Birkenstock, which I don't know. That must have been a joke, right? He's like the hippie skateboard dude, and Ty is very much interested in Travis. So Travis is the one throwing this party. But Cher's like, no, we got to make you popular. You got to date Elton. Throughout this whole party, I'm like, it's very clear that Elton is interested in Cher. You can just tell throughout this whole thing. I mean, the movie shows a lot, which I'm glad, because I'm like, I'm picking up what they're putting down. So that was successful. Elton doesn't seem interested in Ty. They need to leave for the night. Cher's trying to get Ty to leave with Elton to drop her off, but Elton's like, no, it makes more sense for me to drop you off, Cher, because I live in the blah, blah, blah. They're driving. Elton is singing in the car, and that actually made me laugh. But then Elton hits on Cher, and it's real awkward and very uncomfortable. Essentially, Elton doesn't take it well. Like most people don't take rejection well. Leaves her in a parking lot where she gets mugged. So she's crying. She's upset. She gets to a payphone. She calls Josh. Josh's girlfriend and him come pick her up. And she's in the car doing that whole like intellectual college student thing. Like, yes, but you don't understand the philosophy of Descartes. Like something like that. Which I'm like, why did that become the representation of college students? Like we all went to college and we're like, look at how blah I am. Because I wasn't like that. I was getting a minor in philosophy, and I wasn't like that. And it's just interesting that in movies, there's always this like idea of what a college student is. And it's always like oh yes, I'm aware and I know the world now. And maybe I was like that and I just don't remember. But I'd like to know if you all feel that way. If you all think that as college students, is that an accurate portrayal? Because I was mostly walking around like, oh my God, what is this? Is this life? How do I do all of it? And I don't think I ever got to the stage where I'm like, let's talk about Immanuel Kant and how it all makes us feel. Maybe I missed out on a quintessential college experience, but I got through it. So, there we go. They go to a diner to discuss stuff the next day. I don't know for sure, but it looked like the Pulp Fiction diner. And the only reason I know that is because I watched Pulp Fiction for the podcast. Go listen to that episode. It looked very much like the Pulp Fiction diner. So if any of you know, please tell me. This whole movie is like a coming of age story. I think I should have known that coming into it. Cher says that, kind of confides that Elton hit on her and tells Ty. Ty's heartbroken. Even though I'm like, was Ty really into Elton? But it's young love. These girls are 15. These girls are 15. Keep that in the back of your mind. So it's like very much maybe that young love thing. And Cher's like, I'm not interested in Elton. I'm more of like a Luke Perry fan, that kind of look. If you know who Luke Perry is, like, I think he was in 90210, another show I didn't watch and wasn't allowed to. But Luke Perry has a very distinct look, kind of like a James Dean-esque when he was like in his heyday of the 90210. There's also Beverly Hills. Wait, there was a couple shows that I get confused, so I may be getting the show totally wrong that he was on. New character drops. Name's Christian. Christian looks like Luke Perry. And Cher is very, very interested in Christian. So new kid on the block. She is going to try to get Christian to date her. They go on a date. Christian's very 1950s, like, hey, daddy-o, dressed kind of like a James Dean-esque person. So Cher's very much into it. However, this is the point in the movie where we realize Josh seems a little interested in Cher. And gosh, y'all, this is where I had a moment. She's like 15 and Josh is like 18 is what I wrote in my notes. Does the dad know? They go to a party. I'm going to let that simmer for a bit and then I'll talk about it later. They go to a party. The Mighty Mighty Boss Tones are playing. And if you know, you know. Do you know the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones have one specific member who just dances? That is their job in the band. They just dance. And that is the job I should have had. That is the job. That is the career path I was born for. I didn't get there. But never say never. I still got time. So Mighty Mighty Boss Tones are playing. This party's full 90s. Cher's there with Christian. Ty's there. Ty also falls down the stairs. And that was not as funny as when the guy comes over after is like, are you okay? Like, for whatever reason, that was like the most I think I laughed out loud at this movie. I called it, Christian is not interested in Cher. Christian is interested in men, I believe. And I was like, all right, I think that she tried to make Christian her man, and Christian was like, nah, I'm good. They had a whole movie night, and she's trying to put the moves on. She's like, tonight's the night. Like, because I believe Cher's a virgin, and she's like, tonight's the night. I'm going to give it up to Christian. And Christian is not interested. So Christian becomes a really good friend, and I did enjoy that Christian became a really good friend later on. I think Cher is actually very thoughtful and emotionally intelligent. She takes care of her father. She's asking what other people need. She's looking out for other people. She's aware and empathetic. So this whole like she's selfish and ditzy didn't line up at all to me. I thought Cher was one of the most selfless and aware characters I've seen in a movie, and I was like, didn't hit me with the she's ditzy and not very smart. She's only thinking about herself and shopping. I really didn't get that vibe. There might have been like a small sliver of that, but I really did feel like Cher was a thoughtful and intelligent character, and more than just like street smarts. Like maybe she wasn't like amazingly book smart, but sometimes I think emotional intelligence is highly undervalued, and I think Cher had a lot of that. And so as this movie's playing out, I'm like, I think that maybe some peeps got that wrong when they watched this for the first time. It could be easy to take away that she wasn't. Also, it was interesting as I'm watching this film, the fashion in this movie is back in style. If you're watching the YouTube version of this, I think my jacket that I'm wearing, my cozy jacket, I thought would be appropriate for this podcast. It feels very 90s. It's like an oversized, fluffy, green patterned jacket. And as I'm watching this film, I'm like, dang, these clothes styles are literally back in style right now. And I personally enjoy it. But what goes around comes around with fashion, it seems. Once again, I'd like to point out that she, meaning Cher, is 15. And I believe throughout the film, she turned 16, though we don't see a birthday. Just another thing to think about. Ty, under the tutelage of Cher, becomes very popular, even more popular than Cher. Ty is at the mall flirting with some boys, and they take a prank too far and hang her over the edge of a mall railing, like up on the second floor. Christian steps in. Ty is telling the story at school. Everybody's like, oh my God, tell me about it. And so Cher is kind of getting pushed aside. This always feels like quintessential Act 3. Cher and Ty kind of have a little bit of a falling out. Ty goes, I think I'm over Elton and I'm interested in Josh, your stepbrother. And this is where the movie starts to like, I guess, speed up. There's a lot more interactions with Josh and Cher, and they quickly realize they have feelings for each other. Josh, throughout this whole thing, it almost feels like a side character, but he's just kind of watching from the sidelines watching Cher date Christian, seeing, just coming in and stepping in and being the older brother when she needs the older. So you got to ignore the age thing when you watch this film. Otherwise, it's a pretty easy watch. Man, let's just talk about it. They didn't need to write her as 15. Okay, the end of this film. All right, let's go. Let's get into it. Josh and Cher end up together. They realize that they have feelings for each other. It felt weird to me. It felt weird. I know they weren't blood related. It just feels a little incestuous, okay? Also, he's older than her. He's in college. They never explicitly discussed Josh's age. I Googled it. They were saying he was about 18, 19. So my thoughts is they didn't need to write her as 15. They could have made her any age in high school. And they could have made Josh a few years into college. Like Cher, this is not that this isn't maybe any better, but Cher could have been 18. And maybe Josh could have been like 20. It's just Josh finally kisses Cher. And instead of being like, yay, the couple I wanted to be together is together, I was like physically upset and kind of icked out. Like, I think if I had watched this film when I was a teenager, all of this had gone over my head. I think all of it would have just been like, wow, they're in love. Oh, that's so romantic. As an older person watching this for the first time, I'm just like, can I get my red flags and have each in one hand? Can I just wave those red flags around? Side note, I haven't watched a rom-com in a while. So that I was like, okay, this is kind of getting me back in like the era of rom-coms. I don't know if they make rom-coms like they used to, or if they make them as much anymore. Kind of how I feel like comedies have sort of petered out over the years. Where are all the comedies and the rom-coms? Am I just not looking hard enough? But I realized this is the first time I'd watched a rom-com in a while. So what do I think about Clueless? I'm not angry you all made me watch it. I didn't hate Clueless. I was weirded out by some of the plot points. The bit parts in this film were great. Like there was a gym teacher and just like the random people who had like one-liners. I really enjoyed that. I thought overall, the actors did an amazing job. It was a fun, engaging story to watch. I just got real weirded out by the age thing. I don't know why. I just kind of go like, it just felt off to me. And I couldn't get into the film because of that. Mark was like researching some stuff as we were watching, and it's based on Jane Austen's Emma. So Jane Austen wrote a book called Emma, which there's a film of. It's like a period piece, very Pride and Prejudice. So if you know Jane Austen, she did Pride and Prejudice as well. So what is Emma? Emma is the fourth novel by Jane Austen. It's set in Highbury, England, in the early 19th century. Emma Woodhouse, a precocious young woman whose misplaced confidence in her matchmaking abilities occasions several romantic misadventures. So this film is loosely based on Emma by Jane Austen. In the book, I haven't read Emma. Apparently, in Emma, Knightley is the older gentleman's suitor, and he is 16 to 17 years her senior. I'm not sure. However, Emma in the book is 21 years old. I just want to talk. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to understand it because it was like definitely like choices were made. It was still weird. It's always weird in movies when they do this. This type of stuff happens in movies like all the time. I believe the director of this film was asked to write like a high school film of some kind and went with this. I just feel like in the world we live in the infinite possibilities, I just feel like a lot of different choices could have been made, and I got real hung up on how uncomfortable the relationship between Josh and Cher made me. Let me know if you felt the same way. Let me know your thoughts on the film. It made a little more sense when I found out it was based on Jane Austen's Emma. However, I don't know. Kind of put a cloud over the film for me. I don't know that you need to watch Clueless at all, like ever in your life. If it's on TV, you could watch it. What would I give Clueless? It's kind of a little bit of a forgettable film to me. I think it was more of like me struggling with some of the subject matter. And so I think sometimes that makes it harder for me to overcome. By doing this podcast, I'm like extra critical of these films. It's so different if it's just like me hanging out, like I'm going to pop on a film where I'm not trying to like take notes and like critically and analytically watch a film for the podcast. So I know when you put that lens on, it skews things. This was just a real big one for me. Like this one was like a real big one. So that kind of affected my rating for the film. And that's why I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. Wishing there were more romantically appropriate relationships in movies. And that's across the board. More movies really should look into that. I don't know. I just think that that's a little constructive criticism for Hollywood. Maybe they could tuck that in their back pocket and maybe do a little something with that. So I watched Clueless, and that's what I thought. I think I rambled. I went on tangents, and here we are. Before I get to comments from all of you, here's some trivia from Clueless. During the game of Suck and Blow, which was at the party at Travis's, the cast was unable to sustain the breath to make a real credit card pass from mouth to mouth. They made a prop card out of cardboard, and it still didn't work. So they drilled holes into it to make it easier, and then that failed. So the whole cast had to heavily coat their lips in chapstick to force the cards to stick. Can't say that I've ever played a game of Suck and Blow, but it seems like it's kind of difficult to do, so kudos to them for figuring that out. It was rumored that the costume design for this film was exorbitantly expensive. However, apparently, according to the book As If by Jen Chaney, that the budget was actually quite modest for the film. Costume designer Mona May wanted the girls to look like mall rats, not models. So her 63 outfit changes only cost $200,000. Only $200,000. The biggest costume expense was that iconic yellow plaid outfit that Alicia Silverstone wears in the opening scenes. That outfit she got to keep after filming, along with her outfits from the film, which she told Entertainment Weekly she gave away to charity, which is pretty cool. Hopefully that helped raise some money for some good causes. In the movie, when Cher is waiting for Christian's call, the camera angle and shot make the phone look like the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey. And the music playing at that point is from the same movie. I've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey. Go listen to that episode. And I picked up on that because I watched that. So this podcast is educational and helps me pick up on things I normally wouldn't. All right, here's some comments from all of you. Well, hey gang, I'm back and I've got some comments from our last episode of Katie Hasn't Seen That, where I watched the movie Jacob's Ladder. So without further ado, let's jump right in, starting with the person who recommended the movie to me. Gothic Mess shared a lovely bunch of thoughts that actually made me think about the movie in a different way. And I want to focus on the middle part of the comment that Gothic left because I thought it was so interesting now that I've seen the film and have a little bit of that like 2020 hindsight kind of action. Gothic wrote, "One of my favorite parts of the movie is the speech that Lewis, the chiropractor, gives Jacob near the end of the movie about the difference between the angels and demons being your perspectives. I'll include a paraphrasing because that gives me an excuse to read it again, LOL. But it lives rent-free in my head and recontextualized the whole movie for me. The movie changed from a sinister, melancholic journey through purgatory into a, and I know this will sound weird, poignant if not hopeful one. Jesse, Lewis, and others are trying to convince Jacob to stop fighting, not necessarily give up in those specific terms, but to recognize that he's fighting to exist in a world that he cannot exist in. No matter how hard he fights, his body is still dying and he is not coming out of this. Ceasing to fight is the kindest thing he can do for himself. Jesse literally burns away his memories in a scene that is coded to seem like an extreme reaction, but she is trying to help him move on. It's something that continues to resonate with me, and to get a bit real, hits harder now that I've had final conversations with family members before they've passed. Not to end this comment on a downbeat. That's not a downbeat. I really appreciate your thoughts, Gothic. it made me appreciate the movie more. So I'm really glad that you shared your perspective because, going into these things and kind of seeing them for the first time, it made me feel like maybe I need to rewatch it. Like maybe I got to jump back in and give this movie another rewatch now that I have information from what people have shared about this episode specifically, including you, but also like I have some new information and ideas going into it. I kind of want to watch the new one. Maybe that would count, but probably not. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about rewatching it. And that, considering I said in the last episode, it was a one and done maybe for me. I think I might need to rewatch Jacob's Ladder. So thank you, Gothic, for recommending the movie, but also sharing your thoughts. I really feel like it shifted my perspective. Up next, from Twitter, Bullet said, I'm very interested in your opinion on this one. I saw it once when it came out. For decades, I've heard people talk about this film and how much they loved it. I really should watch it again because I saw it, and for me, at the time, it just didn't hit like it should have. That's kind of what I was at, Bullet. So I'm curious if you do rewatch it and if you feel like you understand it differently or you enjoyed it differently, let me know because I feel like maybe I need to rewatch it as well. Even though I enjoyed the experience of it and the mystery of it all, I am curious what a second time my eyes watch it, if it will be different. And my brain, I guess, too. Up next, also from YouTube, Demystificator shared another lovely thought process on Jacob's Ladder. I'm going to focus on the spoilers section that they include. Also, I appreciate when people do that. Like they put spoilers. So like if someone hasn't seen the film, they can like avoid that section of a comment. So that's pretty cool. The Mystificator said, it mixes different themes in one story. That's what's so good with that movie. It tells about PTSD, biblical purgatory, and post-Vietnam situation all at once. In the Bible, Jacob's Ladder is a way to climb to heaven. Jacob has seen in a dream. Jezebel is a bad queen, killing one prophet. And Demystificator also shared that the head-shaking effect was inspired by a Francis Bacon painting. All of that is so interesting, and it makes me appreciate movies that take inspiration from other places and kind of help form the story and ideas and like things like taking head-shaking effect and going like, oh my gosh, a Francis Bacon painting. I don't know what I said and why I said it like I was Southern. A Francis Bacon painting can like affect a movie. I don't know. Sometimes I get really lost in the sauce when it comes to like all the types of media we have to consume. We have art in so many different ways between books and TV and movies and photos and everything that you can imagine, and then how we can make an amalgamation of it and create new art from it. I don't know. It baffles my brain sometimes. And last but not least, I've got a comment from YouTube from Big Daddy Obert who said, 6'5" is not tall, KPP. Listen, that is almost a foot taller than me. Okay, that is tall. I know Big Daddy's from my Twitch community and is very tall, but I gotta say, it feels tall to me. I really appreciate everybody's thoughts on Jacob's Ladder. Thank you so much for sharing with me so I can get a different thought process going for movies, especially ones that maybe I don't enjoy. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy Jacob's Ladder. Go listen to the episode if you haven't yet. But like, it gives me new thoughts when I watch a movie and maybe I don't love it, and y'all go like, well, here's why I love it. And it does make me appreciate things more. So thank you for sharing. And I'll catch you all in the next episode. I'm excited to see what you all think about Clueless. If you want to hang out with me more, or if you just want to yell at me for my thoughts on a specific movie, I stream over on Twitch at www.twitch.tv/KatiePetersPlays. If you'd like to support the podcast and buy me a coffee to fuel my reviews, you can over on Ko-fi at www.ko-fi.com/KatiePetersPlays. You can join my Discord to discuss the movies I review with other Katie Hasn't Seen That fans by visiting discordapp.com/invite/KatiePetersPlays. If you enjoy Katie Hasn't Seen That, please leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps others find the show. Also, feel free to follow and chat with me on Twitter at PlayKatiePlay and on Instagram and YouTube at KatiePetersPlays. Music written and performed by Mark Can Do It. Katie Hasn't Seen That is a part of the Geek Generation Network.